At some point, I went to one of my wife's family reunion things, and they had people's names on the doors, on these dorms of who was going to be sleeping in these particular rooms. And now my mother-in-law and my, I guess, grandfather-in-law, their names are Barbara and Gordon. So
really?
Posted on the door, Barbara Gordon. And I went,
that's the best.
I'm going to meet Batgirl.
Ba, ba, ba.
I'm Captain Logan, and today we're going to talk about the first episode of Batman the Animated Series, On Leather Wings.
Hokey smokes, Batman. On leather wings, that sounds really not aerodynamic.
So, Vince, are you surprised that right out the gate, the very first episode of Batman the Animated Series that was aired in '92, that they went straight to Man-Bat?
Surprised? You know, given the time period, I would say, yeah, I would be surprised if they chose Man-Bat right out the gate.
That was something I completely forgot about, that was the first episode.
Me too. I would call it, I don't know, poignant maybe? I would call it that. I think it's an interesting choice, and I think it's a good choice. I have one major thematic thing that kind of spoke truly to me, and I really wanted to mention it.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Here's Batman, and now Batman is out there. He's really fought some major crime, if we're looking at the movie, the '89 movie, as being somehow canonical.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I'm sure people were.
So we look at that, and then we see maybe this Batman myth that this is a Batman as opposed to a man who's using the image of a bat is now getting out there. So now we have this idea that there is Batman, and then there is a man who is also a bat. And then we have the first episode of this series, which reestablishes that myth very quickly, because now this is a real thing. There is a bat that flies around and destroys crap and apparently steals pharmaceuticals.
And Batman is accidentally being framed.
Yeah.
Because Langstrom's not doing that on purpose. He's just doing this experiment. He's got the whole Jekyll Hyde thing going on, and because there is a, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of a coincidence that he happens to be doing a bat thing, given that he's in the one city that is protected by a guy who dresses up as a bat.
You know, maybe that's not coincidence, considering that he is in the city, that there is this major figure that is a Batman, so that they would think, well, let's try to create an actual Batman.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's ambiguous.
And they don't necessarily, I don't think they give...
I don't think they ever tell us exactly his motivations for even trying the experiment in the first place.
Yeah, Cap and I sat here before we started filming and going, did they give a real motivation other than, you know, just
he's a scientist?
Of scientists?
Yeah.
Progression of science?
For a 22-minute episode, there's a lot going on here. They're doing a lot, and so you can't really expect fleshing out of absolutely everything, but something like, why is the bad guy doing what he's doing? But he's also not just a straight-up bad guy. He's maybe too ambitious as a scientist, but he doesn't have any really malicious intentions. So
he also doesn't have any remorse or any interest in human, well... kindness or decency.
You're right. So he is kind of corrupted by his science. So there's that, but he's at least not. It's not like a take over the world plot or something. But what I was going to say is, I could have used, if not like exactly what his ultimate intentions are with the formula, at least what he was inspired by to do the bad.
Yeah, you know, I feel like it could have been as easy as just them mentioning that they're trying to create a Batman. Just to say, hey, we know that this person exists, let's try to create something like him. But I don't think they do that.
It's neat kind of flipping the names, because you have Batman and you have Man-Bat. Of course, he's not really ever called that in the episode. But you have, at least not to my recollection, but you've got Batman, you've got Man-Bat, and they're kind of opposites.
As opposed to calling him Werebat, which is just inaccurate because it has nothing to do with the full moon.
There was a full moon through the whole episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Maybe there's some kind of... But he changes at will.
That's true, yeah.
Or maybe the fact that... Because later in the episode, he crushes this vial in his hand. Maybe through the cuts in his hand, it gets into his system. But it seems like a quick change. So, and I thought the idea was that he could just will himself into changing.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't feel like I know enough about this guy.
I think that there are some conveniences in the science, something that I like to affectionately call bull science.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even later where Batman manages to cure this problem that he has, He just says, well, let's type this into the system here and see what comes out. And then, look, we've changed him back to a human.
Yeah, and then the episode is over in all of 15 seconds at the end. I mean, like, I remember, we get to that point, and I was thinking, because it's been a while since I've watched this, we get to that point, and I was thinking, wow, I thought we just kind of had our denouement already, and Batman's still doing computery science stuff. And then the very next scene is they go back to what I like to call the Bat Cathedral, because that's what it looks like.
So he can reverse engineer some kind of serum that turns a person into an animal, but he can't analyze some bat hairs to see if it's like any other particular bat hair. And he can also analyze bat sounds to see if it sounds like rock and roll music or anything else.
I love it when, it gets to the point where we see Alfred walk in like 3 times in this episode. And remember that this is our introduction to Alfred, so, I mean, because it's the first episode that's aired. So after a while, you start thinking, okay, what clever thing is he going to enter with? Like, Alfred's always got to make an entrance, and I love that. Like, that's where all the levity comes from in this episode, is between Batman and Alfred. Like, there's not even a lot of levity with the cops. Like, they don't really use Bullock too much for comic relief like he sometimes is in other episodes.
They do over-emote him a bit.
Yes, that was a thing that I kept picking up on.
I'm not going to say as a problem. I'm just going to say that it's definitely prominent.
Yeah. This is a very simple story that is a lot more, I think, about the atmosphere and the ambiance than it is about anything else. And that
it looks really
brilliant
nice.
And beautiful, and importantly, unlike anything else that was on children's television at the time. And obviously, this is the thing that people talk about the most with Batman animated series, is that it was serious, there was something there for the adults, but it was also appropriate for children. But they're already pushing the envelopes from the first episode. Batman gets cut, and he has a little bit of blood on his face. Yep. You know, they go that far, and
they do some stuff where it's shot like a horror movie, or at least a horror something. Of course, nobody dies, but there are some scary moments.
There's some genuine creepy.
Yeah,
especially with and also just some genuine, mysterious. I mean, like, I love all the stuff with Batman hiding behind things inside of Langstrom's lab, and that's all, again, really atmospheric.
I would almost say that some of these ambiances, these atmospheres, are kind of hearkening back to maybe Universal Monsters.
I think absolutely that's true. Yeah,
because I think that's there. I think that might be intentional. I mean, even if it's not intentional, it's still there.
I would say that story-wise, narratively, it is more Jekyll and Hyde, but visually, it's more Frankenstein.
It's very. I would even relate it to the Wolfman, considering that's how. I mean, that's where the gothic nature really.
When you get outside, but I guess I mean with more of the lab stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yes, it looks very Wolfman once you get out into the outside. Obviously, this is something we've talked about in other videos. Batman the Animated Series was partially based on, as far visually, on the Fleischer Superman stuff, which helps give it its very distinct look.
Yeah. You used a word earlier that I thought was really was good. It was fluid.
What gave the Fleischer cartoons that fluidity is that they were rotoscoping, meaning that a lot of what they did in that show were people acting, and then they would trace over it, and that's how you would get these really fluid human movements, and it looked like real people moving instead of characters just animated to move. Well, they're not rotoscoping as far as I know in Batman the Animated Series. I don't think they ever did that, but they make it look like they could have, and they're using that wonderful attention to detail that Fleischer Superman had naturally in rotoscoping. So, like, when they were rotoscoping that show, if a person would, when a person got up, that person in animation would do all of the tiny little things that we don't even think about that you would do when you would get up. So you might pull a shirt down, he might put his hands on a table and stand up. In this, you get cool things like Gordon. The big one I noticed was Gordon is talking, and he just nonchalantly puts his glasses up on his nose like this while he's talking. They don't draw attention to it, they just put it in there, and it all feels so much more real and natural with that stuff. These feel like real actors.
Yeah. And the cape movements really make a lot of sense. I mean, it's not just whipping around. Well, I mean, some scenes, sure. It's animation.
And it might grow and shrink a little bit in certain ways in different scenes.
But it looks, I mean, even if it's, let's say, artistic license, it still makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big place where I said, wow, that's fluid, is the wonderful, I think, what I would call the money shot, which is where the Man-Bat is flying around a blimp, and he's got Batman dragged behind him, and we get to follow that, like with the camera. I don't think anything like that had ever been done. That's maybe not the right word. That's the most thrilling action sequence. Usually, I guess the term money shot is usually reserved for like a great thing you could screen grab, you know what I mean? Like, or the thing that maybe you could sell the show with, or the movie, or whatever we're talking about. That would probably be Batman and Man-Bat in front of the moon.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the money shot of this show.
Because it is what it is, the nature of the beast, they kind of have to cut certain corners. And what I like is that Batman is using his identity as Bruce Wayne to do some of the detective work. What I don't like is that it's kind of forced into this episode where Bruce Wayne goes to these scientists and say, hey, can you analyze this hair that I found in my chimney? Well, first of all, they're going to find out what it is and that it's not natural, and then they're going to ask how it got in your chimney, considering they know he wasn't there.
Yeah, that was a little careless.
So thereby it makes, it's kind of like saying, I'm Batman! I'm Batman! Batman!
You're not even trying to get Vicky Vale to know it or anything. But it's more about the action and more about the atmosphere and introducing Batman in the way they want to introduce him than it is about really telling a deep character piece. But the ideas are kind of in the background. And so it's an identity thing in that you've got a Man-Bat who is Langstrom, and he seems to be almost like becoming obsessed with this, great being that he's becoming. Like you said, he's not even really remorseful about becoming it, And obviously Batman has the same thing. He sees himself more as Batman than he does as Bruce Wayne, and that is inherent in the episode. So we've got Man-Bat using Langstrom to accomplish things, and we have Batman using Bruce Wayne to accomplish things. So we have kind of a neat character parallel going on there. But ultimately, one is obviously the bad guy and one is the good guy inherently because of what they do with those things.
I think maybe, and I'm not sure this is in there, but
Batman is more metaphorically the animal, but he uses that as opposed to the animal using him, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. And they do even say that the animal makes the decision at some point.
That's right.
Langstrom just says that the animal made him do this. Why? Because, he considers himself, I guess, more of the animal now than he does anything else, or at least he's letting the animal call the shots. Which I think is all right. I don't think there's anything. Well, I guess, I'm not discussing the morals of the character, but I'm saying along the lines of a story, it may be quick, but I do think it's effective.
Well, I like it because it's not real explored. I mean, Batman's psyche and his identities are not really explored that much. I feel like this is an introduction to those ideas that maybe will be more explored later on in the series.
Now, I think it's kind of interesting presenting the idea that Batman has to look at what people think he is.
Yeah.
So, because he has to realize that it's not just criminals that he's frightening, it's regular people that he's frightening.
And that's really important because he's got all these people that think that he's Man-Bat.
Or maybe just by him using the image of a villain, because that's essentially what the Shadow was, and that's what spawned Batman.
Yeah, that's the influence.
Maybe using the image of darkness of a villain, using fear, is somehow inspiring crime, even though he's fighting against it.
And again, I don't feel like the episode is exploring that or even addressing that idea, and that's the one place that I'm mostly criticizing it for, is I would have liked to have known if Langstrom did any of this because Batman exists.
Right.
Because I don't think you can... I mean, that's a cool idea. I don't think that's exactly in the episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where it falls flat. But motivation is what we need.
Well, anyway, Vince, let's go ahead and rate the episode.
All right.
Rating with this is going to be kind of hard because I find it difficult to be very objective with this show, but always in something with Superhero Rewind in the title, we always rate, so let's do our level best. Vince, from 0 to 4, what would you give this one?
All right, 0 to 4, 2 being average, right?
Yeah, 2 is average.
I think, keeping in mind how it fits in with the series, I do think there are better episodes, so let's pace ourselves. I'm going to give it a 2. I think it's a good example of what a Batman episode can be.
Okay, I'm going to go with a 3. I'm going to go that high on it because I think that it sets the stage and the tone for everything that's done visually in the show, and I don't think that it ever looks better than this episode.
It's a very pretty episode. Very pretty.
And also, all of those ideas are really well are really well established. Again, it doesn't do a whole lot with them. I'm not sure, being the kind of show that it is right out the gate, that it really has to. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you again next week with another review of the next episode of Batman the Animated Series. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.